Good morning, friends and family. Today is Wednesday. We are now into the new week of this patch for EU as well. What we have for today is a question that I would like to see answered from more average players, from the normies, from the normal 99% of the player base. Whether or not you do Mythic Plus, you raid, you do PvP, and even you, my dear pet battle experts and roleplay degenerates and what have you. This video was sparked, this idea was spawned from an interview that a very good guild, a world 5th this tier, world 5th guild, Big Dumb guild had with Wowhead. I thought the interview was interesting because the questions were around the borrowed powers available in 9.2. Namely, the acquisition of your legendary and double legendary with the Girdle of Unity and then the Memory of Unity and then the Catalyst to get your tier set and then of course the tier set itself. And I wanted to take this idea and turn it into a video because the answers here were very, let's just say, hardcore centric, right? It was quite a boring interview because what players in a world 5th guild were saying were obviously, we want the tier sets immediately at the release of the patch, we want the creation catalyst enabled immediately at the release of the patch, we want our double legendary available at the release of the patch. So that was quite a boring interview because it said exactly what you would expect from a world first guild. But the thing is, this type of situation is only going to hit, what, 100 players in the entire game that will be playing at that level for that much, at that level of rating progression. So for everyone else, the situation is going to be different, right? It's not going to be as hardcore, as heavy as those players. So I wanted to think about how we have gotten so far in this patch with these borrowed powers and how we have, I guess, improved since the start of this expansion, and how do we feel we are right now when it comes to borrowed powers, when it comes to acquisition of powers patch by patch, so getting introduced into the game little by little. Because we know already that in Dragonflight we have gotten the announcement that we are getting a revamp, a rework of the talent system, which will now go back to a pseudo vanilla version of talent points for you to spend in 2 different trees, one for your class and one for your specific spec. And that is supposed to be a more long-term system of power. So instead of having a borrowed power system that gets introduced tier by tier, in Dragonflight we are supposed to have this talent system which should put much of your power, like 60 to 70% of your entire power in the expansion, into this talent system, which is as a base power of your character. That is a good change we're gonna get in Dragonflight. So the question for today is, how did you guys feel? What was the reception in general from the creation catalyst, from the acquisition of the second legendary, and the fact that the second legendary is limited to being the Covenant one, the Covenant option, and then lastly, of course, the tier sets. Tier sets were a requested addition for years, ever since we got rid of them basically in Legion, and now they have come back again, except they have come in an updated version, because now you also have the Great Vault, which can give you the tier set pieces, and then you have the Creation Catalyst, which can also transform a slot into a tier set piece. So I think we have gotten a lot of improvements since older days. I'm not gonna go and pick and bully a specific expansion, but we have gotten several improvements, right? Because the way of acquisition has improved over time. Some questions, okay, some perhaps complaints might be on the time. We have heard about time gating content and slowing down the acquisition of things to drag for longer the stay of a player in the game. With the Creation Catalyst, for example, that was available in week 7. So almost 2 months into the patch was when you were actually able to start crafting your tier set. And then you had the double legendary. The belt for the double legendary was available, I believe, in week 5. Either way, 1 month. You had to wait a minimum of 1 month into the patch before you could get your second legendary. you know, while these systems have been improved and they are definitely better than before, think about the legendary system of Legion and how it was completely RNG, or other systems that we have gotten after Legion in BFA were also quite frustratingly and quite annoyingly RNG. The release of the Azerite armor system, for example, didn't even have a vendor for a full patch. It was completely random. You didn't even have a Great Vault, so you were stuck hoping for a single piece of gear from a single option in your cache, in your weekly cache. Further on, with more issues with things like corruption that brutalized the last patch of BFA. So over time, these systems have improved, they have gotten better. As I said, perhaps the time it took for these systems to actually go live was the problem. As I said, the player from the world first guilds, the players that fight, that compete at a very high level, of course, would have wanted everything immediately. As I said, perhaps many players won't really care as much as them, but then again, between having the creation catalyst on day 1 or having the creation catalyst on week 7, maybe there is a middle ground. Maybe we can find a week, okay? Maybe we can find a slice to slot the catalyst that would have been a little bit earlier, even if not on day 1, right? Same goes for the double legendary. Perhaps we shouldn't have had to have waited a month before the double legendary was available. So that was possibly the main complaint in this patch when it came to the release of these borrowed powers. What about the borrowed powers themselves? Because sometimes the borrowed powers are just boring. Sometimes the borrowed powers are literally just a flat percentage damage increase that works in the background and does nothing. If you remember, for example, the Benthic gear in 8.2 with the collection of mana pearls was basically just flat damage or healing in the background, wasn't really affecting you too much. You had systems like the corruption, which initially was also very passive, because you had things like Twilight Devastation, things like Infinite Stars. You actually had to do nothing by yourself. These things were just proccing on their own. Not to mention this expansion where we have gotten the Shards of Domination. Now, again, Shards of Domination were a borrowed power which actually gave you a significant increase in power, in throughput. However, they were also, once again, passive, gaining a lot of primary stat as a stacking buff. Again, it's just in the background, you don't even realize it. If you didn't see the icon of the buff itself, you barely would even realize you had it. So once we got into 9.2, this tier set as 8 borrowed powers did change the way you do things, let's just say like that, the way you play the game. Even I, in my own little bubble, just playing Restoration Shaman, for example, you significantly change the way you play because you want to play around much more chain heal, because that's what the tier set wants you to do. If you go to Elemental, you get to cast way more lava bursts thanks to your tier set. There are plenty of others, I'm sure you know by yourself, of your own spec and classes you play, where the tier set does change quite a bit the way you play, the effect it's going to have on the character, on the spec, on the rotation, even in some cases on the talent options, and even on the covenant choices. So when it came to the, what should we call this, the flavor, the style of the borrowed power, as far as the tier set goes, it's a very good borrowed power. It is, in my opinion, one of the better borrowed powers we have gotten since time immemorial, right? Because it's spec specific, it does things specifically for your character. It's not like Corruption, which is the same for everyone. It's not like Benthic gear, which is the same for everyone, and it's not like Shards of Domination, which are the same for everyone. It's specific to your class. So it is much more flavorful to have as a borrowed power. The good things, as we said about these borrowed powers, is the fact that you had the creation catalyst, which helped you, you know, with a bad luck protection to make sure eventually you could get your tier set, not to mention the Great Vault, which also not only gave you an extra incentive to do more content in the first few weeks, to increase the overall chance of you getting a tier piece, but also, of course, made it even more likely for you to loot a piece of tier set. So I think the rollout, the distribution of this borrowed power was very, very good. together with the Creation Catalyst, and we can also say the double legendary. The more serious question is, once again, much like the tier pieces, is the time. Why did it have to take well over a month to make this go live? If the Creation Catalyst makes sense to be almost 2 months in because it's supposed to be a backup plan, a bad luck protection system, what about the second legendary? Of course, many people from the world first race, from the top guilds, wanted the Creation Catalyst from the start, and this is where we go into a little bit more of a technical discussion, which is the balance of bosses at release, because you can't just release the double legendary 1 week into the raid or 2 weeks into the raid, because the power increase, I'm sure you noticed yourself, the power increase once you can use 2 legendaries at the same time is massive. So Blizzard had to find a way to balance the raid to not turn into a joke or into a super difficult to balance a situation because of the double legendary, right? Blizzard could have done let's balance the entire raid up to Anduin as if you only had 1 legendary, and then balance the last 3 bosses as if you had 2 legendaries. If they wanted to release the double legendary on the first week, on the second week of the raid, for example. So I think in the options between having the second legendary from the start of the patch, let's just say, you know, to make it a little bit further on, from the first week of Mythic. So on the 3rd week of the patch, after 14 days, on the 15th day, the 3rd reset, you get your second legendary, instead of dragging it on for like more than a month. I think that would have been a better option to give you the 2 legendaries immediately, because you already have to wait. It's already a slight RNG battle as to whether or not or how long you're going to take to get your tier pieces. So at the very least, you know, you have been unlucky, you still only have 3 tier pieces, let alone the poor souls who only have like 1 tier piece only. At the very least, amongst that bad luck, you still have your double legendary already. So that's the only thing I would like to nitpick about the borrowed powers we have gotten in this patch. Tier sets were great. They were flavorful, plenty of power, plenty of changes to the way you play. The release of the tier sets was fine because even though the gear is RNG, every single version of this game ever had RNG anyways, and the Creation Catalyst was supposed to be a bad luck protection, so it's fine to be this late, because also you had a Great Vault offering you tier pieces. Meanwhile, the double legendary is the borrowed power I feel should have come earlier than over a month into the patch. We could go into a tiny little bit more of a discussion about the degeneracy, the situation that Blizzard created with the tier sets by forcing top guilds to start spending hundreds of millions of gold to try to hoard as many tier pieces as possible. Again, this is not the type of video for this. This is not a discussion for the top 100 players in the world for raiding. This is more for the general player base, and the general player base wouldn't really care, wouldn't really give a shit about this type of problems of the top 1%, so we're gonna leave it to the side for the moment. So I'm going to close the video with the reiteration of the question. What do we feel about this patch's borrowed powers? Compared to the borrowed powers of this expansion, and even compared to the borrowed powers you have seen and felt on yourself in BFA and before that in Legion. I think we have done quite well in improving the way in which borrowed powers are released and how much they can impact your character, how much more, let's say, agency you have over them, power and control you have over them. I think it's a great improvement. I am pretty happy if this is going to be the type of borrowed power that is going to be available in Dragonflight. As I said, back to the point of the start of the video, Dragonflight will have much more power put into talents, but as Blizzard made sure to remember everyone, borrowed powers will still be there in Dragonflight. So I hope this type of system, this tier system with a Great Vault help and an extra backup help of something like the Catalyst system, will be something similar. Will be the type, the flavor, the style of borrowed power we will get in Dragonflight. Just please don't give me corruption, don't give me Legion legendaries, okay? Don't give me Shards of Domination or any shit like that in Dragonflight. I think where we are stopping right now in 9.2 is a good launch pad for Dragonflight as far as borrowed powers go. So this was the argument of the day, the borrowed powers of 9.2. Let me guys know what you think about this. How have you felt dealing with these borrowed powers, and how do you feel they stack up, they compare to the previous borrowed powers you have tested and felt on yourself? With this being said, it's time to leave each other to the rest of the start of this reset. Thank you guys again for watching the video and for helping to grow and support the channel, which can be done obviously by liking and commenting down below, as well as subscribing to the channel. This day I am putting no limitations, mostly because I can't come up with anything on the spot. Also, as a reminder, I am found on Twitter over here and on Patreon for further support for my family and children over there. Thank you guys again, see you guys soon, and in the meantime, so how's the green screen, guys? I think it's okay. I think it does the job. It could have been a little bit better. We will see in the future what to put on this bad boy.